There is a particular kind of tiredness that doesn't show itself in obvious ways. It doesn't look like someone dropping to their knees or breaking down in the middle of a crowded room. It's quieter than that, almost disciplined. It appears in the way someone exhales before answering the phone. In the way they pause, just for a moment, before stepping into a room where they know someone will need them. It's the kind of exhaustion that settles deep inside a person who has spent years holding everyone else together. An exhaustion wrapped in competence, wrapped in reliability, wrapped in the quiet fear that if they ever stopped being strong, even for a moment, everything around them would fall apart. And maybe you know this feeling, not from watching others, but from living it. The sense that your strength has become a kind of role you can't step out of, even when you're alone. The way people look at you with admiration, trusting you to stay composed, to be capable, to never slip. It feels like a compliment, but eventually it becomes a weight. A subtle pressure that tells you there's no space for you to be anything other than steady. Even when you're tired. Even when you're hurting. Even when something in you quietly whispers that you can't keep this up forever. This is where the quiet desperation begins. Not loud, not dramatic, but woven into the simple act of waking up each day and preparing yourself to be the one who doesn't fall apart. It is a desperation tinged with the fear of what might happen if you did. Who would step in? Who would care for you? Who would even notice? And so the dilemma emerges in its clearest form. The question you rarely allow yourself to ask out loud: what happens when the person everyone relies on has no one to rely on themselves? The answer is not simple, but the question itself carries a weight you might have been carrying alone for a long time. When someone becomes the strong one, it usually doesn't start with a conscious choice. It begins in small, almost invisible ways. Maybe you learned early in life that the adults around you were overwhelmed, so you made yourself useful, reliable, quiet. Maybe you discovered that being responsible earned approval, safety, or love. Maybe you realized that your own feelings were easier to ignore than to express, because expressing them meant risking judgment, or conflict, or disappointment. Over time, these little patterns settle into your bones. You become the person others turn to, not because you're unbreakable, but because you've learned how to hide the parts of yourself that are breakable. And you do it well. Too well. You learn to swallow tears the moment they reach your eyes, even in moments of crisis, because you believe someone needs you to think clearly. You learn to fix other people's problems before they even have to ask, because anticipating their needs feels safer than revealing your own. You learn to hide burnout beneath a practiced level of competence, the kind of competence that makes people forget you're human. These micro moments, repeated over years, create an inner landscape that is both familiar and suffocating. You become someone who listens deeply but rarely speaks about yourself. Someone who offers support but flinches at the idea of receiving it. Someone who seems to have everything under control, while privately feeling the ground shift beneath your feet. And underneath it all, there is a belief, subtle, unspoken, but powerful, that vulnerability is a kind of failure. That needing help makes you weak. That asking for support is something other people do, not you. This belief doesn't appear out of nowhere. It is learned, reinforced, repeated until it becomes instinct. You feel it in the way your stomach tightens when someone asks, "How are you really?" You feel it in the way you brush off your own pain with a quick, "It's fine," even when it isn't. You feel it in the way you tell yourself, "I can handle it," because the alternative feels unthinkable. But here is the truth you may have forgotten. Carrying the weight of everyone else's world doesn't mean you don't have a world of your own. And ignoring your own needs doesn't make them disappear. It only makes them harder to access, harder to name, harder to soothe. You may notice it in small moments. The way your hands tremble slightly after holding everything together for too long. The way your patience grows thin, even with people you love. The way you lie awake at night, thinking about the things you can't tell anyone because you're afraid it would change how they see you. These are signs that the role you've been performing, the role of the strong one, is slowly draining you. And there is another layer beneath this exhaustion, one that often goes unspoken: the loneliness. Not the loneliness of being physically alone, but the loneliness of being emotionally unrecognized. People admire your strength, but they don't see the cost of it. They trust you, but they don't ask what you need. They rely on you, but they don't realize how heavy that reliance has become. You start to wonder if anyone would still choose you if you stopped being useful. If you stopped being calm. If you stopped being the person who always has it together. This loneliness becomes a kind of quiet ache. Not enough to collapse you, but enough to wear you down. Enough to make you wonder how long you can keep moving like this. Enough to make the idea of falling apart feel both terrifying and strangely appealing, like finally letting out a breath you've been holding for years. And here we reach the emotional pivot point of this story. A realization that is neither dramatic nor loud, but deeply truthful. Being the strong one was never about strength. It was about survival. It was about protecting others because you didn't trust anyone to protect you. It was about suppressing your needs because you weren't sure they would be met. It was about earning safety through responsibility, competence, and emotional self-control. When you see this, really see it, something shifts. Not because you suddenly know what to do next, but because you finally understand the mechanism that has shaped you. You begin to recognize the pattern not as a personal flaw, but as a learned response. A familiar protector. A shield you built long before you knew its weight. In this understanding, there is space. Space to breathe. Space to acknowledge that even the strongest people are not as invulnerable as they seem. Space to notice the parts of you that have been quietly asking for rest, for softness, for someone else to hold the weight for a moment. You don't need to act on it yet. You don't need to force yourself into vulnerability. This is not about instructions or steps. It's about recognizing, with honesty, that your strength has limits, and that admitting those limits is not weakness. As you sit with this recognition, another truth gently emerges. Strength was never meant to be a solitary experience. It was never meant to turn you into a pillar for others to lean on while no one leans in your direction. Real strength, the kind that allows you to endure life without losing yourself, includes the courage to rest, to soften, to allow someone else to see the parts of you that are tired. You may not know how to do that yet. That's okay. You may not even know who in your life is capable of meeting you there. That's okay too. What matters for now is the quiet understanding that you deserve it. That your needs matter, even when you hide them. That your exhaustion is real, even when you push through it. That your heart has been carrying more than it should, for longer than it should. And as we reach the end of this journey together, there is no tidy conclusion, no dramatic advice. Just a space, a gentle, quiet space, to acknowledge something you may have never allowed yourself to acknowledge out loud. Even the strongest people deserve a place to break, and to be held together again.